everyone, welcome to another Keep It Casual, a video tutorial series featuring clean and simple card making. I'm Andrea, owner of Paper Crafters Library and Andrea Walford Designs. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this Amour card featuring stamps from Clearly Besotted. You'll see how I gave a solid image stamp dimension by shading it with Copic markers. So I started off by stamping the elephant from Clearly Besotted's Baby Shower stamp set onto a 4x5¼ piece of Simon Says Stamp white cardstock, and the ink I used was the Simon Says Stamp Fog Dye ink. Now, once I had done that, I then grabbed that little trio of hearts image from the same stamp set and stamped it just above the elephant's trunk using the Simon Says Stamp Lipstick Red dye ink. Now, after I had done that, I grabbed a little scrap piece of that same white cardstock and then took that little elephant ear image, the one with the diagonal stripes, and I inked it up in my Simon Says Stamp Lipstick Red dye ink and just stamped that onto my scrap cardstock piece. From there, I then took a fine tip pair of scissors and just cut out that image very close to the outside edges. So I was trying not to leave any kind of a border. Now, one of my favorite ways to give dimension to my solid image stamps is to add shading with Copic markers. And this works beautifully as long as you have Copic markers that match fairly closely to the colors of ink that you used. So as I mentioned, I had stamped my elephant in the Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, and I found that my warm gray markers from my Copic collection matched the color of that very beautifully. So I started off with my W3 and W0 to add some shading along the left edge. And then I discovered that I probably needed to bring in one more shade just to blend it out a little bit more smoothly. So you can see there I brought in W1. So my dark tone is a W3, my intermediate tone is W1, and then I blend into the color of the elephant using the W0. And basically I was assuming that my light source was coming from the top right, meaning that my shadows would fall kind of towards the bottom left of the image. And essentially, I'm coloring with my Copic markers the same way I would if this was an outline image, except instead of coloring the entire image, I'm only coloring select areas. And I just keep going over my areas with my markers as needed to get as smooth a blend as I possibly can. Now, I am using a flicking technique, so I am just using a very light feathering or flicking, moving from the left edge towards the right edge. And then when I bring in the second color, I will lightly go over the first edge, and then same thing when I bring in my lightest tone. So I basically just added shading to the areas of the elephant that I felt needed to be shaded to give it that extra little pop of dimension. So now once I'd finished shading in my elephant, I decided to, of course, add the ground because I didn't want it to look like my elephant was floating in midair. So I took my same gray markers and just created a ground. So I started with the darkest of the colors, the W2 just underneath his feet, and then used the successively lower colors to add some shading underneath to make it kind of fade into the white. And then my final step was to use my W3 marker just to draw in his eye, because the fog color that I had used to stamp him in was so light that I found that his eye kind of got lost. So once I'd finished with the coloring and shading of my image, I then attached his ear with a little piece of dimensional foam to give it some pop. Now I decided that for the sentiment of my card, I was going to use the Amour image from the Clearly Besotted Je T'aime stamp set, and I stamped it underneath the elephant using my Simon Says Stamp black ink. So at this point, when I was looking at my card, I was finding that sentiment, having been stamped in black, really stood out because it was so much darker than all the other ink colors on my card. So I decided to help kind of balance it by bringing in my W8 marker and just using the fine tip of the brush end to kind of draw in some very interrupted lines along the ground. And then I just shaded it out a little bit more. So now here I'm attaching my card panel onto my card front, which I created out of a 4¼ by 11" piece of Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse cardstock, which I folded to create a 4¼ by 5½ card. And then my very last step for the card was to add just a little bit of glitter to the stripes on his ears and to the hearts using my clear Wink of Stella glitter pen. And that's how I created my card. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Keep It Casual.